Well, my favorite place to go for lunch is Murphy's Bar and Grill.
Uh,
Bar none, comfort food at the absolute highest level.
okay, that's great. And normally I'll try to chit chat with you, but we got so many questions. We're going to get right into it. Is that okay with you?
That's good. Let's do it. I'm excited about it. I actually think it's going to be an incredibly intimate place, which will produce a significant home field advantage. And I think opposing teams, after they get whipped, are going to be complaining about the bandbox they just had to play in. I've not been in the press box yet. No, haven't been, but I anticipate. Listen, I've worked at San Jose State and a number of places that are not what I would call ready for prime time. Wyoming, where the space heaters went on fire. I don't think I'm in danger of being set on fire here, and I'm all good with that. I have a feeling it's going to be Otay Baker. He's a defensive lineman. He's about 6'4" and about 250 pounds, quick as a cat, and he'll be coming off the edge, and everyone's excited about him. I think it'll be a varied and diverse offense. I think part of what his plan will be is to take what the defense gives you, but I think that'll be a multiple pronged attack, and they will be significantly better than they were last year. I think Chevin's issue last year was consistency, but I think a lot of that was because it was the first time he's played in a brand new offense. He'd been in the run and shoot his entire life, from really intermediate right through JV and varsity at St. Louis and then at University of Hawaii. This was a new experience. He'll be much improved this year. Okay, the first thing that you do, it's a good question. The first thing you're really doing is getting completely familiar with the opponent's skill people. You got to know. You don't have to know every guy like a backup on the offensive line or the rotation on the D line, but you got to know everybody who gets into the game. That's number one. Then you get to scheme, and a lot of that you get help with the coaches. You're talking to them. What are you worried about? What are your concerns? We do that, and then the day before the game, we go to the coaches. We're sitting with the coaches, and we're getting information from them on what exactly the plan is. How do you go about it? One of my favorite stories last year, we're sitting with the ESPN guys because they decided to do us all at once, and we're on the road, and Coach Graham is there, and the guy from ESPN says, well, what are you going to do defensively? He goes, well, we are going to show that we are going to be bringing pressure on almost every down. He goes, but what is interesting about that is we're never bringing pressure. We're pretending we're bringing pressure. And the guy said, why is that? He goes, because we don't have enough D linemen. I thought that was hilarious. It was really honest. They won that game and never blitzed once. I kind of enjoy them equally in their own seasons, because I actually think both UH basketball and UH football are going to be really good this year. I think significantly better than either of them were last year. The rhythms are a little different. You're dependent on a partner. My partner in football is John Vineri. Basketball, in the last few years, I've gone solo. So there's a little more pressure. You can't take your eyes off the field, where if you have to in football, you can, because you got your other set of eyes there. But I enjoy them equally.
Mm-hmm. Is basketball, like, to you, maybe more faster pace? So you have to kind of, it's just a faster pace for you. So you always have to call the action.
Well, it kind of depends on how teams play. But with UH's, basically in the last couple of years, has been moving to a more up-tempo set. If they're playing against a team that also plays up-tempo, you barely have time to breathe, but it's fun. I mean, I love it, and it couldn't go too fast for my liking.
Okay. TJ from My Pal is asking, I know you've worked with Robert Kekala for many years. What are some of your fondest memories working with Robert?
Robert K. Cowles saw the field as well as anybody I ever worked with. He could, And actually, his expertise was largely not watching the ball. He was great on the lines of scrimmage. He picked up blocks, he picked up blitzes, he picked up stunts that were applied by the defensive linemen. He was a great fun, and he's even funnier off air than he is on it. He was a joy to work with.
Uh-huh. It must have been fun to travel with too.
Unbelievable. On the road, I laughed myself. I couldn't have, thank God he was driving, because sometimes I was laughing so hard I couldn't have stayed on the road.
I'll kind of expand this question and just ask you, for anyone who's aspiring to do what you do, doing play-by-play or being a commentator, what is some advice you can give these people?
I think you have to start getting and taking anything you can get. If you get a chance, it used to be Les Kiter, the late Les Kiter, God rest his soul, did a thing called Stadium Stars. A lot of people got to start then. But if you get a chance to fill in or replace someone on a high school game, I don't care if they're broadcasting Pop Warner, any chance you get to work a football game, you should do it. And one piece of advice, get a tape recorder, go sit up high in a stadium and call the game as if you're on the air. That's valuable practice. This is my guess now. I think Phil Handy loves the pro game. I think Phil Handy is eventually going to get a head coaching job in the NBA, and I think that's where he's staying.
And Tama from Makakilo is asking, in all your years of doing your show, who were your most memorable interviews?
I've had a couple. Pete Rose was one. Pete Rose knows more about college football than you could believe. Now, we all know that his habits may have dictated somewhat his getting and acquiring a lot of knowledge, because he does like to, how would we put it, place a wager or two, or used to. Mm-hmm. But he was so knowledgeable, and not only college football, but even high school. So we had a great conversation. He was one of my all-time favorites.
He has a reputation sometimes of being a little confrontational or something. Was he cool with you?
Well, I think it was because I accorded him the respect of getting that he understood a lot about college football, high school football. He understood Florida. He said, what do you think about Florida? I said, speed. And he was right then. It was like a bromance. He was like, okay, I get it. I'm talking to a guy who gets it, and he knows I get it. And that always works in an interview. I'm trying to think on that one. That's a really interesting question. One of the people I would love to have interviewed would be John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was, of course, the assassinated president of the United States. He would have been high on my list.
And our last question, and it's good to end on this one. Dwight from Salt Lake. Have you ever thought about writing a book about your career? I bet you'd have some interesting stories.
I have some good stories. Unfortunately, some of them are maybe not ready for, how should we put it, a family environment, especially some of the ones involving Robert K. Kailua. Would have been, they're great stories. I tell them sometimes in an audience that I trust. Not sure I could commit some of those stories to print.
Hey, that's what tell-alls are for, Bobby.
I know, but hardly anybody ever tells all in the tell-alls. You notice that?
Just out of fun, if you did write a book, what would you call it?
I have to give that some thought. I think I've always thought, but that my first thing, because there'd be an element of autobiography, but I've always liked this title. My brother was an only child.
Great. Thank you, Bobby. Hope that was quick and painless, right?
That was fun. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Lance.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby Curran. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you're enjoying the virtual Sports Fest, and we'll see you later. Thank you. Aloha.